Hello, welcome to Postcolonial Space. I'm Masood Raja, and in this brief video I would briefly discuss the distinction between early and later Fanon. Okay, so in my video on Fanon's black skin, white masks, and it will come up there, I had mentioned that it's important to make that distinction between the Fanon of the black skin, white masks and the Fanon of the wretched of the earth. And the reason it's important is because if we don't know the evolution of his thoughts and his praxis, then it becomes sometimes irreconcilable to reconcile early Fanon with later Fanon. So I read in my previous lecture and discussed the concluding part of Black Skin, White Masks. Now that's his first book. It comes out in 1952, right? And in which what he's trying to theorize and talk about is the nature of colonial violence and what it does to the Arab and black psyche, right? That's the question he's trying to answer. And towards the end of the book, he has this humanistic conclusion where he is laying his claim to his own humanity without particularizing his African experience, right? These are very profound words. But if not read critically enough, people can point to these and then make Fanon say things that he would have never intended, right? So the Fanon of the end of the Black Skin, White Masks, having carefully analyzed the nature of epistemic and physical violence, right, that forces the Arab and African subject of colonialism to deal with deep psychological traumas of deep personalization, right, emasculation and all, takes his humanity in his hands, because his purpose there is to declare once and for all that he claims his full humanity. He doesn't need a history to prove it to him, and he certainly doesn't need someone to give it to him. That's the humanistic nature of those claims. He still believes that that trauma caused by epistemic and physical violence of colonization, you can't talk your way out of it, right? That was based in his experience in the clinic, right, where he realized that when he treated the Arab patients inside the hospital, the psychological ward that was given to him, he realized that he couldn't cure them of their traumas, because the moment they went back to the society from where they had come, the society itself was unjust, unequal, and oppressive, and it was that society that was causing the trauma. So for Fanon, the question then was, in order to help his patients or cure them, the society that was causing those traumas, the colonial public sphere, needed to be changed so that these men and women could go back there and feel fully human. That was the quest in Black Skin, White Masks. It comes out in 1952, right? The Wretched of the Earth comes out in 1961. It's still the same Fanon, right? Tracing the impact of violence on the colonial subjectivity, on the Arab self, on the African self. But this is the Fanon of revolution. Okay, he's no longer just simply claiming his humanity. He is here proclaiming that overthrowing colonialism physically, replacing it, is the ultimate path to humanity, right? Maybe he still believes that you as an agent need to claim that, but the book starts with he explaining the nature of the colonial world, right? That it's a violent system kept in place through violences, right? And hence, when he goes on to state, decolonization is the meeting of two forces opposed to each other by their very nature, which in fact owe their originality to that sort of substantification which results from and is nourished by the situation in the colonies. He's already looking in this term of an oppressive regime, where one is an oppressor has the power and the other is oppressed, right? And the purpose of decolonization, as he would say, is where the last becomes the first, overthrow of the colonial order, right? So the reason I always mention that it's important to read both Fanons carefully is because if we just leave Fanon at the end of black skin, white masks, then that is the Fanon who could be mobilized for just universal causes instead of the particularist aspects of his struggle. And that is the struggle of the oppressed, the colonized, the Arabs, the Africans, to claim their full humanity against an oppressive order, right? And that is why we need to read The Wretched of the Earth, the Fanon of The Wretched of the Earth, to understand that he doesn't just dwell at that poetic ending, right? At that romantic, humanistic ending, he moves on from there and actively takes part in the Algerian struggle, along with FLN. His reasons and stuff is explained historically and in his books, but to make this distinction is important because depending on which Fanon you're quoting or citing can sometime have a different impact on your argument. And not knowing the difference, of course, as a scholar and student is even worse, because then, the same people to whom you quote your Fanon could quote the early Fanon and tell you, well, he would have not believed in this, he would have not believed in that. So that's the distinction, right? And that is why we need to read, just like any other author, but more importantly in case of Fanon, his entire oeuvre, right? And not just dwell on the ending of black skin, white masks. So this is just a brief note to my previous lecture, but also a cautionary note for those of us who read Fanon and teach Fanon, that in order to teach Fanon carefully and more comprehensively, we need to understand that by the time he writes The Wretched of the Earth, Fanon is not a 27-year-old psychoanalyst, right? He is an active participant in Algerian Revolution, right? And that because of that, he now actively, through praxis, is trying to dismantle the colonial order that he considers the beginning point of all ills and traumas, right? And that is very important to keep in mind. That's all I have. I hope this was helpful to you. If you have any other questions, please feel free to send them my way. And of course, this and the third one, I have it on my shelf, A Dying Colonialism. It's important to read Fanon carefully, but read all of him. Thank you. Goodbye. And peace and love.